brother. Love you, man.
Thank you so much, Scott, for a very generous introduction. I think for a Measure 91, I get more credit than I deserve. Uh, you see Madeline Martinez, Lee Berger, longtime activists in this room, Ray, Russ himself, people who aren't with us here today, Paul Stanford, Jack Hare, rhymes with hair, right? Jack Hare. Dr. Levesque, who I had the opportunity to pay my respects to while he's in hospice care. And I gave him my notes for my victory speech to thank him, because I understand that legalizing marijuana in Oregon's been decades in the making, and it's taken a lot of people's work. I just happen to kind of help ride the wave and help pull together a coalition that could win at the ballot box and move us forward. But like Russ said, there's a lot of things still left to be done. I am really excited about the Portland NORML chapter. I became active in marijuana activism with Missouri NORML when I was at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri, right in the middle of the state, right in the middle of the country. And I became an activist because I saw my African-American friends treated more harshly for marijuana offenses than my white friends. And I started going to NORML meetings, and was a skeptic about the medical uses of marijuana, and I was a skeptic about the benefits of hemp, to be honest with you. I was purely in it for the civil libertarian and social justice issues, but I've since become educated on the medicinal benefits as well as the industrial uses of hemp, and always fight for those causes as well. But first and foremost, ending the arrest and persecution and the barbaric practice of locking people in cages for marijuana is first and foremost my priority. So I want to thank everybody for putting in the work to do that. So give yourselves a round of applause for that. And now that Measure 91 has passed, the coalition of cannabis consumers, patients, growers, dispensary owners, lawyers, consultants, professionals, politicians that all pulled together to achieve the biggest state election victory for marijuana in our nation's history thus far, with just over 56% of the vote, more than 100,000 votes. Late Governor John Kitzhaber, and about 50,000 more votes than incumbent United States Senator Jeff Merkley. And it's something we can be really proud of, that we had such a strong coalition, because that strong coalition gives us ammunition to protect the will of the voters. And that's what I'm working at now at the legislature. It's what New Approach Oregon, the PAC that started the process to pass Measure 91, is just looking to implement the will of the voters and not go against what people voted upon. So coming up on Wednesday at the Measure 91 committee, I believe it's the Joint Committee on Measure 91 implementation at the legislature, made up of senators and Republicans. The first hearings are on Wednesday, and right off the bat, that we have the bill that really is I would say the biggest threat to Measure 91, the biggest threat to probably medical marijuana as well, is Senate Bill 542, which would really strip out the local control and taxation aspects of Measure 91 and allow cities and counties to pass whatever tax they want, and to allow just a simple majority of a city council or county commission to opt out of licensed marijuana businesses. So I believe that we will defeat that bill. I don't think there are any legislators on the committee that are in a hurry to hinder the regulated market's ability to compete with the underground market. So I think we'll be able to, it looks good, we'll be able to defeat it, but it's important to make your voices heard. Email everyone on that committee, email your own representative and senator, and make sure you have your voice heard. Also on the agenda is a bill that would strip marijuana businesses ability to operate within a mile from a school. We already have the 1,000 feet school rule. That's enough to really satisfy the Cole memo and the federal government's priorities. We definitely don't need a mile, which would really strip out businesses from many communities. So that's another one to make sure your legislators' voices are heard. And then additionally, they're going to hear about opening up Oregon Health Authority rulemaking to allow medical marijuana facilities to be able to relocate if somebody moves within a school moves within 1,000 feet of them. So most people would agree that's a good thing, that if somebody has put their life savings in a medical marijuana facility, they shouldn't have to vacate immediately and shut down if a school moves in within 1,000 feet of them. So with that, that's really the things that are on the top of the agenda. I really encourage everybody to just stay vocal, make sure your voices are heard, and that if you definitely the normal principles Russ has laid out are good policies. So with that, I'm willing to take questions.
All right, let me help out with this. We are recording, so we want to make sure we get the mics. Herb will be on this side. I'll be on this side. Who's got a question? Here we go. Question number one.
First off, Anthony, thank you very much for all the work that you put into this. I'm not alone in knowing all the time and how much effort this takes. Since you spent so much time in Salem, I went down there for the first time last week and sat in on the joint committee. They're open to the public, so Anthony is right that you can go there and support by just being there. And but since you spend so much time there and you have your finger right on the pulse, how do you feel that they're going to go? Because I know there's a lot of unknowns right now. We're all just kind of waiting. But how do you feel that they are going to have for the licensing requirements just being from like opening up? Sorry, I just woke up like a half hour ago. How do you? Because my concern is that they have licensing open. Just I see this not only as a great opportunity for our state but I see that this is an awesome opportunity for Oregonian small businesses, and we've been hearing a lot from who are they going to allow. Who are they going to accept licenses? Who are they going to give license to? I'm just wondering what's your feeling? One, what's your feeling about opening licensing just to Oregonians? And two, what do you think that they're going to do with that?
So Measure 91 was silent on residency requirements. I don't really have a position either way on residency requirements. Probably not going to take a position on that. Don't necessarily oppose them. I think the legislators' inclination is to protect Oregon businesses as much as possible and the small kind of mom and pop shops. And so if I had a crystal ball or trying to predict if there were going to be some type of in-state residency requirement for at least, if not owners or 50% owners, or similar to the medical marijuana facilities, you have to have a manager, person responsible for the facility be an Oregonian resident. I think that's most likely going to occur. I think the one thing that's probably up in the air is how much investment can come from out of state. I think there is a concern about big money coming from out of state and kind of controlling the market. But at the same time, if somebody is a mom and pop operation and they want to expand, say they're supplying a medical marijuana dispensary now, but they'd like to expand to a Measure 90, both on the medical side and the Measure 91 side. And if they have a rich relative that lives in Colorado or California, their ability to get some investment or a loan from them, I think is probably something the legislators are open to allowing, particularly because no business can get a small business loan from a bank for a marijuana business at the moment. So if I had to predict, I think there will be some type of residency requirement, at least a manager or a co-owner that's an Oregon resident, at least for the first few years under the licensing system.
Is that good? All right. Anyone else? Yes. Let's come over here.
Thanks. Thanks for taking this question. Just I had a quick question about the school zones and dispensaries specifically. You talked about, you know, the LCC or the OMP uh, facilitating some kind of like move if a school was to pop up in 1,000 feet of your dispensary. What provisions were they specifically, you know, that you had in mind when addressing this issue?
The provisions as far as what exactly?
Well, you said that you touched down on if a school was to open up within 1,000 feet of an existing dispensary, there would be steps to you know, to rectify the situation or to handle that in a specific way. I was wondering if you could actually elaborate on that a little bit more.
Gotcha. So the bill that's before the legislature, I believe it just opens up to rulemaking to come up with a process for that. And I think some of the things that would be debated, you know, on one hand would be you don't have to move at all. You could say let's say the school moves in 990 feet away from you. maybe that can suffice, or you have a year to move, or maybe it can be amended that you have, you know, 18 months to move, but most likely, you know, a year to move, to find a new place, and to have the ability to, you know, not see your life savings go away. So that's probably the most likely thing, is to give you a time frame before you can move. Thank you, Sam.
Hey, Anthony.
Hey, Leo.
I was wondering if you could comment on the House bill that was introduced by Lou Frederick last week regarding the expungement of nonviolent marijuana crimes, and that take place before July of 2015.
Definitely completely in support of that. I don't know where that bill is at the moment, but I think it's something we should definitely monitor and throw our support. I do know we do have some legislators that's definitely important for. So I think it's something that we have a good chance of getting past this session. So it's definitely something to monitor. I don't think it has happened. Lee, do you aware of?
Where that he had introduced a bill. I know that in 2013, the Oregon Criminal Defense Lawyers Association sponsored a bill that reduced manufacturing from an A to a B felony, so it could be expunged after 20 years, and changed the delivery statute to be in C felonies so that they could be expunged after 3 years. There was a glitch in it, however, that made it so if you got convicted today of manufacturing, you could expunge in 20 years, but you couldn't relate back. And there is a bill to fix that was scheduled for hearing this week in the Senate Judiciary Committee, which was pulled because of concerns about how Measure 91 affected it. So I'm guessing that between whatever it is OCDLA is doing and whatever it is Lou Frederick is doing, we're going to get some positive result that takes care of this issue. What is important, and what I hope groups like Portland NORML could work on, has to do with the fact that at any given time, 100, mostly men, in Oregon prisons solely on cannabis-related offenses, and perhaps doing something. I have spoken with a dispensary owner who is going to be working with a group that the law school had set up, the Justice Institute, on this, but it would be a good Portland NORML project to try and see if we can get Governor Brown to commute those sentences, and we could free the prisoners, because that is what Measure 91 is about. Building an industry is how we got what we're going to have under 91, but the industry is secondary to ending the arrests and prosecutions and freeing the prisoners. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Lee. Anthony, over here.
So, hi, Anthony. I just,
Thanks, Steve.
I know that we have quite a few things that we're trying to keep track of here. I'm have at least half a dozen bills that I know I'm following. And one I'm concerned about is HB 2546 that adds cannabinoids to the Clean Air Act. I know the intention of that is that legislation is to protect minors from tobacco and e-cigarettes. But we were talking about trying to have, where's our pub, where's our vape lounge, you know, and this is definitely going to inhibit that, and I'm that is concerned. I've already emailed all the members of the committee, but I don't know where that bill is at, and I wondered if you were tracking that at all.
That bill's in the healthcare committee.
It's passed out of committee, and it's going to get it's at its third reading in the House. It's going to be voted on soon in the House with Representative Buckley, who's one of the co-sponsors about it. But in email communications, he's indicated he didn't want to use that bill to create vapor lounges. Now, there may be one thing Russ and I agreed on, and that I testified about on 2641, is that Maureen Dowd wouldn't have wound up in a hotel room eating chocolate and wondering why nothing was happening and eating some more, you know, if she had a lounge to go to. So it's critical that this happens. And I'd be curious, just build on your question, if you're hearing that from legislators, is there some other vehicle besides House Bill 2641 that can address the need for that?
Yeah, I have heard that having excuse me, an exemption particularly for medical patients, or getting kind of the same type of treatment that cigar bars have for like a special license, those are possible. So I think that important for people to let their legislators know that bill, if it passes out of the House, which I expect it will then move to the Senate. So then we'll have a chance to either amend it then during the Senate, or tackle another bill that would, I think the list of priorities, I'm sure a lot of people would like to have cannabinoids. As far as the cannabinoid, I guess, e-cigarettes being sold to minors, I think if it's not a patient, I think that's something that, you gotta say, if you're 18, you can't, you can't buy it. That's completely acceptable. Then, I think most people would like to see, the cannabinoid be stripped out for everyone. If we can't get it for everyone, then at least for patients. And then if we can't do that, then at least to have a separate lounge like cigars have. So I think it's, I think it's possible to do. And I think that's, I think it's something we can work on this session. And definitely, if we can't get done this session, then future sessions.
There's no science to adding it to the Clean Air Act, though, and we're talking about fighting junk science or lack of science. I mean, cannabinoids are neuroprotective. There's all these studies about it doesn't do lung damage, the way tobacco does. I mean, there's no science supporting it being part of the Clean Air Act.
That is correct, Steve. I guess probably one of the things that is can be very maddening for everybody involved in cannabis activism is that science can kind of go out the window in the halls of the legislature or the halls of Congress. Or
hey, Steve, if you email me about that, I'll put together a fact sheet and a here's the studies to look at thing that we can at least get to them that they're passing junk science.
I submitted as written testimony stuff from California Normal that Dale Geringer had provided me, that California Normal had submitted in a some kind of like a county hearing on this issue. So, it's in the record anyway. And in fact, if you look up the committee, look up the hearing, look up the exhibits, you can find that there.
Yeah, but that science definitely it can't hurt. But unfortunately, good science doesn't always win the day in politics.
Any other question?
Anyone else? Sam?
I just wanted to add to that in terms of, and Lee, maybe you can testify this as well. You said that how many lobbyists were working on that bill right now, Lee?
There's 50 lobbyists were working on the bill.
Okay.
When I testified, Sam, I sat next to a guy from Reynolds, as in R.J. Reynolds.
Yeah.
So,
so with that in mind, for those of you who are not super familiar with the legislative process, once a bill passes out of one chamber, whether it be the House or the Senate, if it gets amended in the second chamber, it has to go back to the original chamber that it was in. And so if you're thinking about doing some kind of legislation with vapor lounges that has that kind of direct effect, I would heavily encourage you to look for a different bill to work it into, and just be mindful of what the original language is so you can make sure that they mesh. Because with 50 basically tobacco lobbyists working on that bill, I don't see any way in hell that they're going to allow you to move it back to another chamber, open it back up to make more amendments, and then push it through the other side. So just something to think about in terms of legislative strategy.
Thank you, Sam. Anyone else over here on this side?
Hey, thanks, Anthony. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the fears that are being raised by the legislature. I think understanding fear as sort of the resistance to the progress that's being made, and if you could talk a little bit, and not just kind of the obvious, preventing it from getting into minors or DUI issues, but some of the fears that are sort of contained in some of the opponents of what's going on in Salem.
Some of the kind of fears that are brought up, I think the cities and counties like to bring up the fact that they don't think they get enough money and that they're going to have to spend more on enforcement than they're getting, even though Measure 91 gives 10% to cities and 10% to counties earmarked for the local law enforcement. And then you hear a lot of fears of, how to track marijuana from seed to sale and not to have interference from the federal government, which I think is something that all of us are going to, want to be paying attention to and have concerns about. And high concentrate THC products, butane hash oil, propane hash oil, things like that, especially things that are explosive, definitely, or can be explosive, not done properly, definitely concerns folks and people who are allies of ours at the legislature and opponents as well. Don't want to have a Maureen Dowd story hit the Oregonian a few days before 4 to 8 states are voting on legalization in 2016. So so the packaging and dosage and labeling of edibles, leakage into the underground market, federal interference, and ensuring that there's enough revenue to properly enforce are all big concerns and fears that folks have.
Anyone else over here?
All right, that's great. Give Anthony another hand for coming out here and spending some time with us, answering some questions.